Moses Banda is the Financial Services Advisor for the Presidential Secretariat, the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat. Moses, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good morning and karibu sana to Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in the hot seat.
I'm glad to be here. I've always listened to other people, but now it appears like I'm the one here now.
Yes, you are. And there are many questions this morning. Of course, we saw that the 14th of August rolled around and some of the things that we were told would not happen then happened. And so we're asking ourselves many questions, but we're going to get into that. Okay. But, we want to welcome you and welcome you properly with some of the traditions, that we have. And as we do that, CT is going to welcome you with today's proverb.
Yes. Proverbs for the whole of this week come from the country of Niger. Niger is the largest landlocked country on the continent. Actually, in West Africa.
In West, I was going to say,
Yes.
On the continent? No.
I was waiting for you to catch it, and you're slow. So, yes.
I was wondering which continent are we talking? Okay, so.
Okay, no. It is. They are the. In fact, just neighboring Niger, there are countries that are now in North Africa that are larger than Niger. But we had said earlier in the morning that the thing that is outstanding about Niger is, if you look at it from a global perspective, they are the largest deposit of uranium, largest on the planet. But, now, this is the big but, they are also one of the poorest countries in the world. So you have to marvel and say, with such a huge uranium deposit, which is actually being mined and utilized, how then is it that they are still so poor? Anyway, the answer belongs to a different session, a different discussion. The proverb for the day: you cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
You cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
Wow.
Moses, your thoughts about
interesting. That? I mean, you have to be there for things to happen. I mean, you can't be a standby person. You must get into the thick of things. I see it like there are people who make things happen. And then there are those ones who watch them as they happen. And there are those ones that don't know what happened. So I think, to me, you can't shave a person who is not there. Means that you are missing in action.
Huh.
Yeah, I think. So you have to be there. You have to be part of the things that are happening. You have to make it happen. Don't be a standby. Yeah, that's the way I see it.
I love it. City hands out points, I don't know how generous he's feeling this morning.
The generosity when it comes to someone's opinion can never be adequate, because someone's opinion is just that, their opinion. It's their interpretation. It's how the proverb speaks to you.
Yes.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, you've got 10, because you've said exactly how you see it and how it resonates with you.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, there you go. Okay, so you have to be there to make things happen, and one of the things that happens around conversations of government and administration and the executive then is the economy. And this current administration came in on the back of a lot on the economy. The economy was front and center. And then now we see a position which you hold, Moses, as the Financial Services Advisor for the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat. Let's start with that Secretariat before we get into the thick of things. What is the mandate of this Secretariat, and upon its, establishment, what is it to do?
Okay, thank you. I mean, the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat mandate basically was to, or is to, track the president's key economic transformation pillars, track, advise, and support the entities that are supposed to realize these transformative pillars. Our work is not implementers. We advise. We therefore work with ministries, we work with counties, we work with state departments, we work with other stakeholders to achieve that. Right now, you know very well that the key pillars for the transformation of the economy as per the plan is centered around agriculture. It's centered around MSME and financing. It's also centered around housing and construction, health, digitization, and creative economy. So those are the areas that right now the Secretariat is focusing on in order to address this economic recovery challenge. Yeah.
So then, what's your job specifically in this?
From the financial inclusion point of view, you realize that financial inclusion basically means that accessing affordable and usable financial services and products to individuals and businesses in I would say in delivered in a responsible and sustainable manner. So it means that there must be some exclusion of some sort. So our job strives to remove those barriers that exclude people, individuals and businesses from accessing and participating in the financial sector by accessing the financial services in order to improve their lives. And that's where we come in. You realize that a country cannot grow at all if its people cannot access unlimited financial services. And this country, you know, we have quite a big chunk of our people over the years, especially the bottom of the pyramid, the ones in the informal space, the 10 million of them or so who have not participated effectively in the financial space. So that's what we strive to do.
Okay. For the longest time, there's a buzzword. You know, you're supposed the job of government is to make the environment conducive in order for people to be able to do business and for its citizens to thrive, etc., etc. You know, we hear it all the time. So I'm hearing you say essentially that this Secretariat and your position as an advisor is the driver of making this environment more conducive, at least from a financial point of view, right? So when you talk about removing the barriers, then for people, then I hear immediately, to get a major population, a major percentage of the population, if not as many as possible, number one, banked, and then access to financial services in the form of loans or access to capital and things like that. But then there are many things that need to happen in order for that to be. What would you see as some of the challenges why that cannot happen as quickly as it ought to, or is not happening?
I think from where I sit, I'll say that people will agitate if they have bad roads in this country. People will also agitate if they do not have good quality access, healthcare, education, and the like. But they will not agitate if they're not able to access finance. And therefore, the finance has been deemed to be this very difficult service that people should access. And you realize the players are basically private sector in this regard. And government's role, of course, is not to do business, but as you rightfully put it, is to create an environment that allows people to access this. But sometimes it becomes difficult. And that's why you find that when the president went round during his campaign, and he held economic forums with the citizen in the counties. One of the biggest challenge that kept on cropping up, especially from the people who operate small businesses, was the high cost of borrowing, and the bureaucracy and the difficulties that they go through, and the exploitation, especially with the players that are in that industry. And therefore, he picked upon himself and said, okay, we will see and try and see how we can create an environment where you can access. So government might not force the private sector to do certain things, but it can undertake what I'll call a demonstrative effect, like it did with this Hustler Fund, where it came in to demonstrate that, if you develop the right financial products, if they are tailored toward the needs of the biggest citizens in the country, then they can borrow. And that's why you see within a period of 6 months or so, we had almost over 18 million people borrowing about 33.3 billion shillings, because it was tailored to meet their needs. And this is usually one of the most difficult aspects of financial inclusion. The players are not able to develop financial products that suit the people. Now, this demonstrative effect is telling the public sector, in my view, that, listen, guys, there's demand here. There's business here, but this business needs to be. There has to be a financial disruption for you guys to come in, and we see that as a good demonstrative effect, because then why would somebody want to borrow at 19.7% per annum if they are able to access the finance at 8%, 7%? And as it continues to grow, I think the message is, you guys, you're not doing things the right way, And I think government should also be able to set standards. Let me say the word standards, in the sense that there has to be some order of some sort. There has to be standards that are complied, not just in financial matters, but in the economy, such that there's no. We should be able to ensure there's no exploitation. That when you come in when you are a hawker, for example, what's next after hawking? Where do you move next? Yeah. And what certain things must change for you to move from one state to another. So I see governments pushing this sector to ensure that there's I'll say top-down focus in financial inclusion matters. Finance should be a basic human rights thing, and not just something that's so difficult. People think finance is for other people, especially the ordinary people, and we have learned to live that way, that finance is difficult and it should be difficult to access. But we think that need to be demystified.
Let's paint a picture of what's going on in the country, and then maybe you can tell us then what you advise, right? So we know that the majority of people today in Kenya are not able to access finance if they wanted to do their business. Okay, Hustler Fund comes in and maybe you can borrow 500 shillings and then you can do a little bit more after that. As you borrow, then you're eligible to get more as you go along. But your first borrowing is not going to save your business, as it were. That we know. Let's look at other sources of capital, other sources coming from banks. The base lending rate is through the roof as prescribed by the central bank. That then means that individual banks, when they lend you money, are going to do some crazy gymnastics and you're going to get huge interest rates, all right? So you're going to have to think twice about if you're going to get your capital from them. If you're going to go into some kind of business, we're looking at inputs for agriculture, very high. We're looking at other issues of power, very, very high as well. We're also looking at infrastructure, maybe a little bit wanting when it comes to then what we're supposed to do. So there's the picture, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't look very pretty, does it?
It doesn't.
what do you advise from your position that should be done? Because we've come from the established point that it is there to say this is what the people of Kenya then need in order for them to thrive. And the picture is not very pretty. What are you advising then now? This is what we need to do to save the people of Kenya from this slippery slope that we are going down.
I guess the financial space is such that it's been undertaken as a business from, in quotes, from people who want to make a kill and sustain their businesses. But I think we are saying that the top is saturated, because if you look at the structure of our beneficiaries, you have like 3 million people who are in formal employment. You have another 6 million people who are, I'll say, in blue collar job. You know, they have some form of licensing formality of some sort, and then you have this big chunk of the 10 million people that we call hawkers in this country, people who make from their business between 3 to 800 shillings per day, and we are saying that the people at the top, the 3 million, the 6 million, somehow are able to engage the financial formal support systems, if I might say that. These are the people who have some sort of collateral. These are some people who have some sort of credit history, some records, and therefore it's easy for the formal institutions to be able to underwrite their projects and therefore finance them. But the big chunk of the 10 million is the one that we are saying that the stakeholders need to look at the 10 million as business opportunity, a big business opportunity. But this is where the challenge is, that many of the formal financial entities or players are not able to design products and services for these 10 million people. And that's where we are saying that this is what we want to demonstrate, that these 10 million people, you guys have not been able to tailor good products for them. But if we demonstrate as government, if we are taking the lead and saying, listen, these people, if all of them are able to access, and majority of them access finance, then they will have more products and services produced, more goods, more manufacturing, and the top here, the 6 million and the 3 million will thrive. But they'll only thrive if the bottom here is thriving. And the government has started the journey. That's what I'll say, because the disruption of the affirmative action funds like Hustler, the personal, the group, the Women Enterprise Fund that we have also just re-engineered and also put it on the technology platform for it to reach more women, and the others in the pipeline that we are engineering would be a demonstrative effect that there's business there. Then the model of the government of the agricultural value chains, that this cooperative model at the ward, which is aggregating our farmers and aggregating our business people at the ward, that aggregation will be an infrastructure that circumvents the use of the traditional collateral requirements, because we'll be dealing with many members in one place. Their inputs, production cycle and the market taken care of to consumers, to market, and therefore I see private players coming into this aggregation and saying, I want to pick a value chain like dairy, for example. One says, I want to pick dairy as my product. Another one comes and says, I want to pick honey. Another one comes in the same aggregation and says, I want to pick poultry. Another one comes and says, I want to pick tea, I want to pick avocado. And through that, because of mitigation, through the use of the cooperative or the aggregation, then it mitigates risks, and therefore pricing comes down. There's assurance that the produce will end up to the market. The price is agreed up front, and therefore deduction from source, just like it would happen in a salaried job for a person. When it comes to agriculture value chain, the same happens. So we are pushing the attraction of the private financial institution and telling them, hey, here there's a market, a big market that we have overlooked for a very long time. We are telling other players, listen, these risks are mitigated, and because they are mitigated, then you can review your pricing model, and that way, then more people will access financial services, and we think that's the beginning. Yeah.
Okay, CT has 65 questions.
I've listened to what you're saying. Makes perfect sense, and one can even see evidence of the very things that you're saying the government is doing. But to what end? When you look at all these plans, at what point will you know that your plans are successful? What will you see? What will you see among the Juakali associations, people who are in that so-called informal sector? What will you see among so-called young people who are starting up all these businesses? What do you expect to see? Now, in terms of, one, how will the businesses present themselves? That's one. Two, if you look at the larger picture, since you say that the vast majority of our people who are in business belong to this sector, how much more money do you see or do you envision will revolve in this sector? And how will that then play or relate directly to the larger picture of the economy of Kenya and to the collection that the government can realize from these businesses?
What I see as the end game in terms of demystifying financial access is the excluded, which is the majority, having options of accessing unlimited, and I'm using the word unlimited because what has been there for the last so many years its finance has always been unlimited. I mean, you are not sure, even if you apply for a facility, you will get it by the time you want it. The turnaround is just a big issue. We want to look at a situation where, when we look at the M-Pesa outlets, the way there are many in this country, we have similar like outlets where people can just access funds when they want to do something, just because of, one, the order and the policy framework and the civic education on financial matters. I'm using civic education as opposed to financial literacy because when you talk about civic education, people think it's about human rights issues, it's about liberty and whatever. But I think we also need a lot of civic education for people to understand that the money matters, right from the school curriculum all the way to adulthood, so that we learn how to be producers of money as opposed just to consumers. We can invest, and therefore I'm saying that money should be accessible. It should be affordable, because we still believe that the cost of delivering financial services in this country is still high, and therefore the challenge is to the players in this industry to continue being more efficient, because by being efficient, then they're able to pass affordable to the beneficiaries, and that's why you find we ask ourselves, how do you underwrite a business like a person who roasts maize on the roadside? How do you appraise that particular business, because these guys in this industry formally, you are trained formally to appraise or underwrite businesses using financial records, balance sheets, issues to do with cash flow. But when you look at a guy who roasts maize on the roadside, who needs 2,000 shillings to buy 2 bags of maize, 1 sack of charcoal, and just sit out there, and then this person is not able to access 2,000 shillings in that economy because it's damn expensive.
Right.
They have lived in that life by borrowing from the money lenders. You borrow 2,000 shillings at 10% per day, which is 200 shillings. If you stay with that money of that lender for 1 year, then you'll be paying back almost 73,000 shillings for a loan that you took for 2,000 shillings. And that's how they have lived in that space for so long. The same happens to guys who I'm sure you've seen City and these guys who sell hawkers who sell sugarcane. They run along you on the road.
Right.
The same. They require 1,000 shillings. If you look at guys who roast maize on the roadside, there are over 50,000 of them in the country. You can imagine 2,000 shillings. 2,000 shillings multiplied by 50,000 people. How much is that? Almost 100 and something million. If you say those guys will borrow half a year, which is 26 weeks, this is another almost like 3-point-something billion. But the question is, this the majority, and there are many like those, is that they have been exploited for so long that when you come in and say, okay, instead of being charged 200 shillings per day, there's an option here that charges you less than a cent, per day, less than a cent. And we're saying that's what we want to see, people accessing that money that way, affordably, not handouts,
yes,
but affordably. Then the question is, how do you get that guy out of the roasting maize to something else? And this is where we are talking about, I'm talking about order now, government providing a template for order, where this person is told, you see, now you don't pay rent from where you operate. You don't incur any other cost. But if you are moving to the next level, then there has to be order. There has to be a place you'll sit that is space that is well marketed, well taken care of. Now you'll be expected to pay rent. There are certain obligations you must undertake. You will be expected to keep records. You understand? You'll be expected to pay tax. You see? You'll be expected and all that. So that we are saying that there must be desire to be something else from where you are. So in this space, you can access finance. You can move to the next level. You can participate in the money economy. You can pay tax. You can demand for services. Because you're not. We don't want somebody to be a hawker for the rest of their lives.
Indeed, and even as we talk about the economic agenda, Moses. Can we really see finance operating in a silo? Because for me, it doesn't make sense that it does, based on the very thing that you're saying today.
Yeah.
Because for me, it's a little bit more than just the money. You can put money in the pocket of somebody today, but then there are things upon which this individual is going to spend that money. In order to develop themselves as an individual, and then the nuclear units around them, and then moving on to society. You've just talked about it now. The person who is roasting maize on the side of the road, you want them to graduate to another place whereby they have a more standard setting where they're selling, that you want them to be banked, you want them to be formalized, you want them to start paying tax, etc., etc. But we also want them to be part of a greater ecosystem where other things are happening, where they take this money that they spend and they can apply it to a health system that works, that they can send their children to within an education system that functions properly, that their taxes, they can see that the roads upon which they have to ply every day to come and roast this maize is actually working and working properly.
True.
So for me, I don't see that finance can exist on its own when we're talking about an economic agenda that essentially is going to develop the country. How do we see these things actually before our eyes happening? I don't know that an individual who accesses the Hustler Fund today, for example, in the 6 months that it has been in existence properly, can say this is the marked difference that I have seen overall. If these other things are not working together.
Agreed.
And I think that is the problem. If we don't see that these things are working in concert with other things, then we come back and we say, what is government doing?
Agreed. And rightfully so. And if you look at the recovery, the economic recovery model of the 5 pillars that I talked about, you realize that finance is just an enabler. Because we want to be food secure through agriculture. And we are saying, okay, these value chains that have been mapped in the entire counties. Every county, we know what is the flagship value chain. We know that once these individuals are aggregated into a cooperative, then we are saying the agricultural part of it should access finance because it's well structured, it's well organized, and there are markets. And that's where in agriculture you create the largest jobs. We are saying finance can kick in there, but when finance kicks in, many other things should happen in that aggregation of where you have so many people there. You have farmers, you have business people, you have all of them aggregated in one place. And we are saying through generation of their income through that structure, and they are assured of constant flow of cash from their value chains and the businesses that they operate at the ward level, then they are able to access good health care in terms of they can pay NHIF because they are receiving their uninterrupted income through their value chains throughout the year. They are able to save. The circle within the aggregation can be able to borrow from various financial players because there's a structure of some sort. I see it like a supermarket. If you walk into a supermarket, you walk in and you find shelves of different goods and products. That is detergent, that is water, that is beverages, that's fruits. All these products belong to one entity. That's the supermarket. They don't compete as such. But when it's season for going back to school, you walk on the side of the school and you get people have parked. The next time, so we are saying that whatever is put in that aggregation that we are calling a supermarket is products, from the farmers at the grassroots. Because the farmer who runs operates a cow and therefore generates money from dairy is the same farmer who runs who operates coffee, is the same farmer who operates an M-Pesa out there and a boda. So we're saying it's the same person. So they need to be put together in this supermarket and be able to benefit from all the value chains that they operate and other businesses. And then there will be what we call economies of scale to run down financial costs, and these people can be able to access, and therefore through that they can access good education, as you're talking about, good healthcare that you're talking about, a good mortgage they can access and pay because they have all these value chains. So it's a journey. And I in the beginning I said it has to be disruptive. It cannot be business as usual, because for the last 60 years we are where we are today. Our people are poor, there are no jobs, cost of living is high, our foreign exchange continue to decline, we cannot feed 50 million Kenyans. What about when they reach 100 million? So something has to break, something has to change. Model that.
Mr. Banda, if you consider for a second,
yes,
you are a financial person, so I want you to explain to me this base rate. What does it do? What is it?
I know from the banking background, the base rate is like what you say that for you to break even, this is what you can't sell below. It's like a business where you buy sugar from wherever you are buying, and you are saying this sugar, this is the cost I've bought, I've incurred, and for me to be able not to make losses, I have to return what I have incurred.
Okay.
But then there's what you call the margin. Now, what do they call the risk margin? So that now you can say this is the base rate, but for me now to make profit, then this is what I need. This is my markup, and the markup is based on the cost you incur. Those ones who are very efficient, then their markup is not as high. But those ones who are inefficient, then they keep on passing that inefficiency to the borrower, and therefore that's why you see the differences of the risk points.
So when the central bank governor announces that they've raised the base rate, essentially this process that you're talking about suddenly becomes more expensive.
I mean, when they do that, the bank take advantage of that to not just the bank, the financial players, let's say, take advantage of that to readjust their base rates. But this is where we are saying that the efficiency of financial players should be able to be standardized in such a way that you are pushed to be more efficient. So that the end beneficiaries does not continue suffering the high cost, because you can't be inefficient so that you pass the cost to me. And that's what I was saying. I see a role of government here, where we are saying setting standards, where you're saying, sure, there's some basic and you engage, you don't dictate, but you engage the players and say, listen, there's a market here. We want to make it attractive for anyone who wants to come and engage in financial ecosystem, as we said, that there's 10 million demand here. And this is big, just like how the mobile telephony industry demystified that space, that they developed products of as low as 10 shillings, 1 shilling, and they went to the mass. We are saying in financial space, this has to happen, that we have to, and I can't blame the players, because come to think of it, City and Do, at the institution of higher learning, people are not trained how to go and take care of this big space that I'm talking about, the 10 million informal sector, whether it is finance for expanding businesses or even insurance. I expect if you go to Kibera, that's where you're likely to get in the slums people who require insurance more. And therefore, somebody should be able to design unique products for that group of people who are mikokoteni and people who push the cart and all that. But you find they are easier dealing with people who are employed, you and me, and things like that. And we need to go where it's difficult and get solutions.
But have we had a situation in this country where something like the base rate has been reduced instead of it being increased? And what is the effect when you reduce the base rate?
You remember during Kibaki's time, it was reduced. And what happened then, you remember the government deliberately avoided doing business, crowding the private sector. And therefore, I don't know whether you remember, the treasury bills went as low as 1%. And therefore, over time, they went down, so that financial institutions now were forced. The shareholders insisted that, listen, you can't put our money in government paper. You need to push it out. And therefore, what that did was to transform the private sector, and there was more money availed in the space.
In the space.
Yeah.
Why aren't you doing it? Because if what you say is to make money more available to the large masses, and it has been done before, and we want to really reach these people, why are we not doing it now?
I guess all of you know where we are coming from. We are coming from an economy that has not performed. We have borrowed, and we find ourselves where we are. So what happens then is that when government has no money, then you find that it has to keep on borrowing domestically or whatever, and crowding, and that's what we are trying to now to remove and disengage from, by saying, listen, this space that has so many people, 10 million plus, we need to approach it differently. Okay. We need to avail more in here. If I have a 500 million amount, I would rather spread it to many people and reach maybe 2,000 people than give it to one entity that gives me a building as collateral. You see, so that's what you're saying. How do we become innovative in developing what is required at this level?
Even as you asked that, though, Moses, being innovative, doing things differently is one of the things that President Ruto's government has said it will do regularly. Yes. You have talked about being innovative and doing things differently, disrupting the status quo. Yeah. But yesterday, which is always a very specific day in the calendar when it comes to certain things, is that we saw that the price of fuel remained unchanged, and for a specific thing, that there was the reintroduction of subsidies. One thing that we heard time and time again, that we cannot sustain this subsidy program for fuel in the country. So the government said, no more subsidies. We're going to shut that down. One of the things that would be disruptive, as you've said. But then yesterday, we saw the reintroduction of subsidies. So what, are there actually subsidies in place to stabilize the cost of fuel? Or what exactly is going on? If we're going to be innovative and disruptive, we're going back to spending money in order to make life a little bit more easier for Kenyans, isn't it? But then, which is it? Subsidize, not subsidize, be innovative, stick to the status quo. What really is the driver of this economic agenda, specifically when it comes to this?
Let me say, subsidy is not bad per se. I think the issue of subsidy is where are you going to put it? Where are you going to place it? And if you are placing it where it's going to produce, just like the government has done in the fertilizer subsidy, where it's for production as opposed to consumption, that's a good way to go. I think that the challenge comes in when we want to borrow to consume. We want to subsidize to consume. Just there has to be a value. There must be a return on investment, and that's what I'm saying. That as we move along, I think the government is not afraid to keep on looking at what is working for its people at a given time. We are not in this tight jacket thing where we're saying this can't happen. I think as we move along, it's only fair and normal and prudent for somebody to keep on asking, saying, where do I put what I want, so that many people can be able to do what to benefit, and we will see a lot of that before we stand on our own in terms of meeting all our development needs through local generation of revenue. That's what we desire to do, and the more we bring more people in that bracket where they can see value in paying taxes and the like, and they see value in service, the better, because then we'll be able to start being self-sufficient from what we collect and generate. Yeah,
this government has an advantage that previous governments didn't have, despite having a great number of people who are unemployed. These unemployed individuals are far more educated than we've ever had in the past.
Yeah.
So when we talk about disruption, the introduction of certain ways and means by which their livelihood can be improved, it's not just a receptive audience, but it's an audience that actually already has knowledge. It's an audience that can actually do more with that knowledge.
Yes.
If that opportunity is actually provided. Yes.
I agree with you, because you remember a city that every year we churn out 800,000 every year, 800,000 into the job market. But you realize out of the 800,000, the formal sector takes on only about 200 to 150,000.
Yes.
And then the formal takes 50,000. That's 200,000. So we have 600,000 that is left like that completely. But we are saying creating a job at the bottom is much cheaper than creating jobs at the top. So we have to, as you say, we have to look at all these things and say where we are able to create more jobs cheaply is where we need to focus on, so that we absorb all these people. And that's where we are saying this economic model of aggregation at the ward level is going to create opportunities for this number of people to be able to pick certain areas and focus on along the value chains.
Indeed. Time does go very quickly. Moses, thank you for being with us here this morning. Definitely conversations that need to continue. The economic agenda is front and center when it comes to seeing how Kenya will progress going into the future. Thanks for being our guest this morning, and hopefully we can have a chat with you again in the future. Moses Banda is the Financial Services Advisor, the Presidential Economic Transformation Secretariat. He's been our guest this hour.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.